So it's not going to be 2024, everyone. That we know. Welcome to the Voice of College Football and Florida State Seminoles Live right here. Appreciate you being here. It's every Wednesday at 6 Eastern Time. We got George on the line from Renegade Report to help us break down some FSU football. We are just about 17 or 18 days away from the opener against LSU on that Sunday. George, how's it going tonight?
Going good, man. We're here in blustery Pensacola, Florida. It's like 130 degrees, something like that this afternoon. FSU Nation is a buzz, man. What is today, the 16th? We've got a little over 2 weeks before we kick off in Orlando, Camping World Stadium, number 5 versus number 8. Just excited, man. Excited to get this college football season rolling.
Yeah, this one's been out there for quite some time, and we thought it would be a top 10 matchup, and that officially became a reality with the AP poll release earlier this week. And as you mentioned, number 5 versus number 8, Clemson sitting at 9. All right, well, LSU and Florida State, I just think that certainly any football game can get out of control based on turnovers and mishaps and that sort of thing and mistakes. But if both teams are playing near maximum and there isn't anything crazy happening by way of turnovers, I expect something similar to what we saw last year in terms of the competitive nature of the game. I don't see either one getting away from the other one.
Absolutely, man. I find myself, I have to be careful because I know so much about Florida State. I'm a Florida State guy. That's what I spend 90% of my free time on is Florida State football, whether it's working on the Renegade Report, the Voice of College Football, whatever the case may be. It's all centered around Florida State football and what we have going and the 4-year trajectory that Mike Norvell has been on. But even with that, and you kind of look all the different preview magazines where they have certain different position groups where Jordan Travis is ranked amongst the quarterbacks, Jared Verse among the DNs, our offensive line unit, etc. I like the matchups. I favor like most of them. But at the same time, I know they've got the edge at linebacker. I know that front 7 is going to be a different story than it was last year. I know their offensive line is going to be leaps and bounds better. Those guys, really came on as the season went last year. And by the end of the year, they were like considered freshman All-Americans, etc. But yeah, I see Florida State with the edge. And like you said, it'll probably be a close game, close competitive game like we saw last year. I think if you're going to have a blowout or kind of a team to run away with it, it would be FSU. But anything other than that is just going to be a dogfight that comes down to, who gets hot in the fourth quarter.
And so, George, if it gets away from somebody and it does separate, you say FSU is going to be the team to separate. Why would that be?
So the biggest hole I see on either team, if you're going to look at it from the top to the bottom, is going to be defensive back for LSU. They already, they weren't the greatest defensive back group last year, and they lost some guys. They weren't too excited heading into this year. So Brian Kelly goes out and signs 6 guys out of the transfer portal. And I believe 2 of the 6 are already off the team, dismissed for different reasons. We won't get into this last one wasn't too serious. I'm not sure if they've even decided on what they're going to do with Denver Harris exactly, if he's completely removed or not. But it's quite a conspicuous deal there. And with Jordan Travis and the wide receiving threats we have, along with the tight ends, that's the one place I could see it, getting away from LSU. If we get in the lead 7 to 14 points, it's going to be really hard for them. What are you going to sell it to stop the run? Then they're just going to get torched over the top. And if they try to, drop a 2 shell, then we're just going to take that 3, 4, 5 yards every single play and just go like that. Now, you could say the same thing about LSU, but my main concern for them is Jaden Daniels throwing the balls deep on our secondary. We'll see. Jaden, he's an amazing quarterback. He scrambles. He tore us up with his legs last year, and he could do that again this year. But to be able to consistently get the ball over our heads, I don't see it.
Yeah, I have a tough time separating these two teams. I really do have a tough time separating these two teams. If you continue these position unit comparisons, they both have tremendous wide receiver cores. Uh, Florida State certainly got an excellent offensive line. I would tend to favor LSU there slightly, maybe. Uh,
On what?
in terms of offensive line. I
Okay.
would say that I think Florida State has better running backs. And again, these position units, of course, aren't playing against each other, so it's more or less, O line versus D line, and flip that in the other direction. Mason Smith was a guy that for LSU who left the game early against Florida State last year, and Harold Perkins, I thought, was the best defensive player in the country last year, at least when I was watching. And they say that Mason Smith's better than he is.
Yeah, there's no doubt Mason Smith was a problem before he went out. But back to what you first mentioned, I think if you look at the recruiting rankings and just look at a potential standpoint, that LSU's offensive line definitely has that argument. I mean, like you said, like we were talking about, they've got 2 sophomores now that came in as 5-star all-world, guys. I think FSU's offensive line is just so experienced and so deep that I guess I would say LSU has they may have the higher ceiling as far as talent goes on the offensive line, but I kind of know what I'm going to get out of our line headed into that game a little bit more than maybe they do. Maybe you still have some sophomore slump, because this Jared Verse matchup with that left tackle, that's going to be a fun one to watch. And like you said, it's going to be a battle the whole way. And I absolutely expect a close game. I guess not to upset the LSU people out there. I'm not saying FSU is going to go out there and blow them out. Just that if one of the two teams were to take off, that I would see it would be more of us. You mentioned the running backs. That's a really awesome position for us. It's really the way Mike Norvell uses his running backs. It's not so much that we're going to have one guy who just takes the lead and gets all the carries, but Trey Benson is going to be as close to that as we've seen since Mike Norvell's been in town. But you're going to see kind of a guy that does, his role and all the way through 4 deep with the running backs. You're going to see Trey Benson come out there and be the guy to run it up the gut. You're going to see Lawrence Toafili catching wheel routes out of the backfield, running routes, all these kind of things. You'll have a guy like Ja'Kai Douglas show up in the backfield, run routes out of the backfield as even though he's a wide receiver as a running back. Keziah Holmes is a guy that was like a star at Penn State as a freshman and kind of got hurt. He was at Florida State all last year on the practice squad, just getting better. And he's really, really flashed in camp. He talked about the scrimmage before in the production meeting, and he really tore it up in that scrimmage. So really happy with our backs for sure. I definitely give us the advantage there. Back to Perkins, though, you're absolutely right. I don't think there's much anybody in America that's going to say that Florida State has the edge in the linebackers. They've definitely got us there. Kind of like the offensive line, we know what we're getting out of our 2 starting linebackers, but Perkins he's just another level of kind of star that we haven't had at linebacker position in a long, long time. He's going to be the one main guy on defense that everybody's circling. And they also have, like you said, Mason Taylor and those guys on the defensive line. But I feel like that's going to be just a knock and drag out battle the whole game, the line of scrimmage, kind of the deciding factors. As weird as it may sound, I feel like that battle is going to happen, and both sides are going to bring to bear a efficient sword, if you will, the line of scrimmage. But the difference is going to be in the secondary and the wide receivers and tight ends, kind of who wins that battle.
We talk Florida State here every Wednesday night here at the Voice of College Football, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Appreciate you being here. Leave those comments and questions in the chat. We'll get to them with LSU up ahead in Orlando in 17 days. Also, the show just prior to the game, the show that we'll do that week on Wednesday, whatever the date is, August 30th, I believe, we'll have Carter from Power Hour LSU to join us to give us the LSU take. And we already have segments with Carter. We've got segments with Logan Robinson that we've recorded here in the last couple of weeks, so you can check those out over on the national channel. They're here in terms of position breakdowns with Logan right here on the main or on the Florida State channel as well. So plenty of LSU and Florida State matchup content already available, and we'll be doing much more. What's going on there at Renegade Report, George?
Man, like we were talking about earlier, just getting to the season. Practice reports. We keep y'all guys updated with practice reports. We got to do our very first Renegade Rundown, kind of our flagship podcast for the channel. We did that this past Saturday. Me, Chris, and James. So jump on the channel and check out all that stuff. Being here with you on the Voice of College Football has been great for us. We've had some cool traffic over there and plenty of people telling us Mark Rogers sent them. So we appreciate you for that. And thank y'all for joining us on this show, of course.
Folks, after LSU and Florida State get after it on that Sunday night, join George right here at the Voice of College Football on the Florida State channel right after the game. George going live with all of you after every Florida State post game. So Absolutely. That we're looking forward to that. We appreciate George picking up the Florida State post game for us.
That's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to go live directly there from Camping World Stadium, outside of the stadium at the tailgate, the 36 degrees tailgate with Chris and James and CJ Wilson and the whole crew. There's going to be a ton of FSU alumni there. If you don't, come by and see us, we're going to be live. I'm hoping some guys, maybe Logan will swing through. We'll have James pop in. That should be a really fun post-game show. Maybe I can get my buddy E.G. Green on the screen, and we'll have a good time.
Excellent. Yeah, so there was this scrimmage here earlier this week. When was that? Just a day or two ago.
Yeah, I believe Monday.
Yeah.
Monday night.
As you've compiled these practice reports, and especially with this scrimmage, did you come away with anything in particular that is intriguing?
These things are really closed off, and we get bits and pieces of information out of the scrimmage. Everybody has been super, super high on Brock Glenn. It's sounding like, and we had this conversation a lot this offseason, and it seems around spring that it was Brock Glenn at the beginning of spring, and then all of a sudden everybody was talking about A.J. Duffy for 3 weeks. We had it again at the beginning of fall camp, but it just seems like Brock Glenn is really kind of locking down that third QB spot, and it's real exciting to hear from him. But it's like, we all want to hear about Jordan Travis, but, it's they're only going to get so much out of these guys when it comes to those scrimmages. Young guys that have looked really, really good. Kevin Knowles switching over to strong safety has been great throughout camp. He had another great scrimmage. Azaria Thomas, he's somebody that you don't hear a lot about, but in that conspicuous absence of hearing from him, I think he's been a rock throughout camp, and he had another good scrimmage. I'm trying to think of who else stood out throughout the scrimmage. Johnny Wilson and Jordan Travis, kind of that team has really been putting on a show during that scrimmage, and then this past practice today, it's like their connection has really blossomed to a whole nother level. I think kind of the story coming out is just kind of what we've known all along. This year, we finally have the depth. Like, the level of play during practice doesn't drop. It's not like before Fabo and a couple guys came off, all of a sudden, a big drop in the level of play on the field. But we have got, a good 40, 50 guys now to where when the second unit's out there, you're still having high level of competition at practice, and it just keeps rolling through the whole scrimmage. It's a real high level. And now with Brock Glenn taking these steps, I think it's really great for the young defenders and everybody kind of, learning their place at Florida State.
Folks, you want to be here every Wednesday, but especially in 2 weeks from tonight, as we do a big Florida State LSU blowout preview for the full hour and match up the two teams with Carter from LSU Power Hour coming over to match up LSU and Florida State. Of course, came down to an extra point last year with the blocked extra point that it could have been overtime, of course, and Florida State had a 1-score lead, could have made it a 2-score lead inside the 5-yard line ran the pitch play. Things went awry from there. LSU last minute drive down the field made things a little too interesting for Florida State fans, but 24-23, and Florida State was off to its 10-3 season. Not much difference between the coaches poll and the AP poll that came out here in the last 2 days. Florida State sitting at number 8, Clemson at number 9 in both polls. As we talked about last week, that's all going to get worked out. Nothing to be concerned with there. I would like to see where each individual votes for a certain extent, because when you land at number 8, there could be a pretty consistent viewpoint of Florida State being in that range, or there could be certain writers that have them, number 3, number 4, number 5, and then others that have them back. But I would tend to think that that's a pretty consistent voting approach to Florida State being in the last few spots of the top 10, I would think.
Yeah, this year, not to toot my own horn, but that's pretty much where I figured it would be like all year. I kind of said, they just bring us in number 7 or 8, I'll be happy. I think it was kind of everybody was on the same page this year. I don't think you could put them up in the top 4 just because, as much as I love the Seminoles, like, we haven't proved it yet on that level. That playoff level is kind of another thing, but we also ended the season, like, I believe 13th in the polls. So they weren't going to drop us below 13th. And then we rode the momentum off the transfer portal again, and having the top, number 1 in retainment as far as yards and starts and everything else coming back. I believe we got 87% of all production coming back. So I think that was pretty level. I think the surprise came. I think we're a little surprised that LSU was ahead, thinking maybe that they would be, maybe be 8 FSU, 10 LSU, but they didn't have that 3-game stretch. They kind of lost to us and then had a great year after that. So I can definitely see them being ahead of us. I have no problem with it. It'll get settled, like you said, on the field week 1.
Yes, it will. So you got your plans all set for that Saturday night in Orlando?
Absolutely. I say that, but we'll play it by ear when we get down there. The plan is to go down, help them get set up, do the tailgate, and have fun, and then go in. Mark, I haven't decided. Am I gonna come out third quarter and kind of be the business? I've been doing this for years and years, and just be the professional, or am I going to stay in there till the last 3 seconds, count off the clock, and then fight the traffic out and everything else? So I guess it just depends on what kind of game we get, how I play it when we go down there, but definitely excited. We're going to stay down there Saturday night, maybe Sunday night. I guess, again, depending on how the game goes. Probably end up staying Sunday too, and come up that Labor Day morning. How about you? What do you got planned for week 1? I doubt you'll be in Orlando.
Week 1, I will be planted right here.
With the big screen, huh?
Okay, got to watch everybody.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's the way to watch everyone. Fortunately for that game, it's the only one in town, so that's the only one I got to keep track of on Sunday night. But there's a noon game on Sunday. College football is really filling up the weekend even more. There's a noon game. There's a 3:30 game on Sunday. So it's not just the one game on Sunday, but from Thursday through Monday, it will be pretty much nonstop.
We didn't get in the Big Ten this year, but I'll tell you what, with all the implications with the Pac-12 after dark, what's it going to be like next year and the year after that, when you don't have all those Pac-12 after dark games and those same teams are playing early vis-a-vis the Big Ten network, etc. Like, how are we going to keep up? You're going to have so many games. It's going to be like NFL Red Zone. If somebody can get the rights to where they could set that up for the FBS Red Zone or whatever you wanted to call it, that would be something else.
ESPN used to do something like they tried to mirror that to a certain extent, but there's just too many games and it wasn't quite the same. And I'm trying to think what they called that, but they bounced around. They would put it on, I think, ESPN News, and they would bounce around all the games and try to get to the most crucial part of whatever games, but they only had rights to their games. It wasn't like the NFL Network that has rights to everything across the board. So
absolutely. No commercials.
Yeah.
7 hours.
The challenge for me is trying to keep track of everything from noon to 2 o'clock in the morning, all over the place. So that fun starts here in a couple of weekends.
No doubt. No doubt.
So week 0, a week from Saturday, USC's in action. They should blow out San Jose State. Notre Dame's in action against Navy. That might be a little bit closer. They actually played a close game last year, but besides that, a lot of group of 5 teams in play. There's only 5 or 6 games as usual, but that'll whet our appetite a bit. And
yeah, I really wanted to get another game, but those are really kind of hard to schedule with there only being so many teams that have that exemption. Maybe we can get Hawaii next year or something. I really love having those week 0 tune-ups. Gives you a little bit of peace of mind, just getting to see your team out there for real. It's gonna be fun for our week 1. Just bam, right into smack dab, right into reality. Yeah, the game's Sunday night, but we're gonna drive up on Saturday night. I'm sorry if I misspoke there, but yeah, we're gonna stay in Orlando Saturday night. We've got a block party set up downtown on Church Street for the tailgate, so y'all come see us down there.
Okay, that will be
We
awesome.
could get into some recruiting if you want, as much as the camp and the season's upon us. Recruiting doesn't stop, so hopefully we got some big stuff working on that end of it too.
What is the scoop there if we're looking at any particular targets or any announcements coming up?
Yeah, so if you followed Florida State recruiting pretty hard the past couple of years, you've got a safety that I'm constantly gushing on. I forgot to bring him up when we were talking about the scrimmage, actually. I heard he had another great scrimmage, and of all the freshmen like on campus, he has really been doing great. Conrad Hussey. He's from a high school called Chaminade Madonna Prep, and it's one of these big time programs. It's not, I don't know if they're quite as big as Buford, but every year they have 3, 4, 5-star, just monster recruits, and they've got a couple guys this year. There's a guy, Saquon Patterson at DB, who's trending the Knowles way. I'm not going to make any prediction. I don't know when he's going to commit. We're hoping soon, but look into Saquon Patterson, and he's just a really, really great defensive back. I believe he's up around number 100 top recruit in the country. And then also, that just so happens to be the same school that Jeremiah Smith goes to. So Landing Bolden helped us with Smith. If we can get Patterson, and I really think it'll ratchet the chances we can get Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star wide receiver in town too. We can get those 2 guys, plus another guy that's been trending FSU's way is Miami commit Artavius Jones, the defensive lineman. Those 3 guys, if we could get those 3, that would put us up around, I think, 23 or 24 guys in our class. And at that point, it's pretty much whale hunting and being real specific about who that next guy or 2 will be after that.
Very cool. We would advise everyone and encourage you to head on over to Renegade Report and check out George's work. We will leave the link there in the chat, and certainly give George a shot. And he's going to be here after every Florida State game, starting with a big matchup against LSU, of course. So get that on your calendar and lock that in, knowing that after Florida State goes to double zeros, check out George right here. And again, check out what George has available all the time as well. Yeah. So the realignment situation. So this is basically it from my perspective. Yes, everyone's been eyeing this August 15th date, knowing that Florida State, anybody else in the ACC would have to notify the league by August 15th to give it a full year before, of course, that's a year's notice. So the date came yesterday and went. Florida State did not have any communication or notification to the ACC. So Florida State will be playing ACC football in 2024. So nobody should be alarmed by that whatsoever. There is no question that they have not given up on this initiative. They still are on a mission to better their situation. There's a lot to there's a lot to handle here. There's a lot in regards to the legal aspect, the financial aspect, the dynamics with the league. There was a vote this week about the Notre Dame was trying to push with Stanford and Cal coming into the ACC. That was voted down. It still received a lot more yes votes than no votes, but Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, NC State voted against it. So it was an 11-4 vote for Stanford and Cal coming into the league, but not enough votes. They needed one more vote. So I don't know at what point they're looking to take another vote, but they're on the cusp with only one vote needed, one more yes vote to bring in those two football teams. Do you have any thoughts about Stanford and Cal coming to the ACC?
Yeah, look, personally, like if you asked me, like if we could just add them, would I be opposed to it? I'd be like, fine, I wouldn't mind playing Stanford over a Syracuse, every other year. That'd be cool. But when it comes to realignment and the chess moves getting between the ACC and these teams, I just feel like if those guys are going to get in, it would be as a replacement to try to kind of keep the team rolling or the conference rolling once Florida State and Clemson eventually made their exit. I don't see any of those three teams in North Carolina, Florida State, or Clemson allowing them to come in. And this whole thing with the 15th vote that Notre Dame has, I don't think they're going to allow that to take any kind of precedent to be that 15th vote to get them over that threshold. I think if you're gonna vote on that, you join the football conference full time. Then we can add your buddy Cal and Stanford. As far as besides that, there's only so much they're going to be able to do to pull, to get them in there. And really and truly, that's if Notre Dame would join the ACC, that could really change everything. I mean, you could really look at expanding and maybe getting some other teams in there to keep going. You wouldn't be the Big Ten or the SEC, but when you have a Notre Dame and a Florida State and a Clemson and a Miami that's dormant, you have enough big names to at least, if you're good, if you win that league, you're going to get, a spot or two in there out of those 12 teams. The other 10 might be SEC and Big Ten, but your top programs will be able to thrive and still have a shot. But yeah, Cal and Stanford, I don't see, having any. It's kind of more like look, we tried to add some teams. We tried to add Cal and Stanford after the rest of the conference was picked clean.
Yeah, it's the Big 12 approach. They're just trying to grab up more schools, more football programs, more territory that's going to add to their stability. So that's the Big 12 approach. And I'm not knocking that because that's the only approach that is available to them. So for the ACC right now, that's the approach that's available to them. That, but like you say, the pivotal point is Notre Dame. It could be a completely different conference if Notre Dame joins, and then I don't know what would happen with the ACC going back to the negotiating table and saying, okay, we've got a different conference with Notre Dame on board, and then they're going to bring in Stanford and Cal. So we've changed the dynamics of this conference. We need to renegotiate this contract from a television rights standpoint. Our brand is worth more. I don't know if they could pull that off, but
yeah, absolutely. That's kind of you kind of brought it around for me. The main point is Stanford and Cal. Like you're adding two teams to the payout pool. I know they don't get. There's some kind of thing where they don't get paid the first couple of years. Something else covers their pay. I'm not sure exactly how the it's written in, but they don't bring enough to to incentivize the ACC to split it up 16 ways instead of 14. But now Stanford, Cal, and Notre Dame, yeah. Like you said, we could probably go back to the table and get some more real millions to where it's worth it. So yeah, I totally agree. We're in lockstep on that. It's kind of like Notre Dame. It's like it's like tipping their toe in. We want every sport but football. It's like now we want to show up at the meeting and start voting on stuff for football. It's like just come on down. It's like if we could add them NBC dollars to the ACC and get everybody in the same room, they could really do something. But cooler, will they do it, or will they rather just let Florida State and Clemson walk? I guess they've got another year. That's kind of what I've told people. Okay, it didn't happen this year. Who knows? Maybe that'll help SEC have a chance to weasel their way back in it, and maybe it doesn't end up being Big Ten. A lot can happen in a year, but we'll see.
Yeah. Anytime I criticize Notre Dame, it's not a knock on Notre Dame. It's a knock basically on the ACC, or it's a knock on everyone else in college football that allows that school to do whatever they want. And in this case, it's have a full vote, a full member vote, just like everybody else. But in the most important sport, they're not a member of the conference. And then they are the ones we find out that are proposing. They're the ones that brought Stanford and Cal to the table for football. They want other teams to join the ACC as football members, but they won't.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. It's as ludicrous as it sounds, and they hold all the power. Like, geez Louise, what the NCAA too. Like, what does the NCAA do? Like, what is their role? Like, couldn't they be like, hey, Notre Dame, get with the program here? You can't just be. But I don't know. Maybe FSU can go independent. Maybe we can find a network. Maybe that's the answer for us. Maybe maybe Fox can take us and we can go independent. And we'll just schedule Notre Dame. We'll schedule 5 ACC teams, 5 SEC teams, and we'll roll with it like that. We'll get one G5 team. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I guess we could work out, if everybody could work out their own contract with these networks. The problem is your Syracuses and your NC States, et cetera, go by the wayside. Because all the money, you'd have like a 12-team, like a pro league, basically, I guess, at that point. But we're getting off in the weeds now. Oh,
yeah.
man.
I actually had a conversation with somebody recently that proposed that everyone should just be an independent team. I don't like that thought, because I think conferences mean something, and rivalries within conferences. And if every team's an independent and they're just negotiating their own media rights deal with, boy, that would be a mess. In terms of, I think Fox and ESPN would be pulling their hair out trying to deal with every individual school to figure out. And then, yeah, so I won't even go down that path either, because, yeah, that. But the problem is there's not a commissioner. The problem is there's not a governing body. And you mentioned the NCAA. So the NCAA is supposed to have the power and supposed to be leading college football, but I think that's gone by the wayside a long time ago. And the NCAA has shown us, even going back decades, that pretty much they're a disciplinary committee. That's all they do. That's all they do is take leads or tips from schools that are telling on other schools, and then they lead the investigation, and then they decide what the punishment is. But besides that, what have they done in decades? They haven't done anything. These conferences just do whatever they want.
Right. Judge, jury, and executioner. They can decide, a month later to change the rules and deny Daryl Jackson his waiver. But then they can give Jim Harbaugh this deal where he's supposed to, forfeit 4 games and all this stuff. And then whatever happens behind the scenes, oh, well, that's fine. We can give due diligence on that. We can decide, well, we see there's some reasoning here. We can let this one pass. No game suspension. It's like, but no due diligence for the young man who, moved home to be near his ailing mother. And the same thing with the North Carolina kid who lost his whole freshman season during the COVID, and you could go on and on. It's just they're teethless. It's like what aggravates me is it's like these conferences and these teams kind of give them the power. It's like at the end of the day, if we played Daryl Jackson, what would happen? Like,
yeah, that's a great point. If everyone just decided if everyone got together and decided we can determine our own rules in terms of who's eligible, who's not, who's violated guidelines and rules, and who's not. Yeah, if everyone agreed and Daryl Jackson was allowed to play by everybody else, by Florida State first and foremost, and then every opponent they played, I don't know what the NCAA what they could do about that. You're
Like
right.
Reggie Bush won the Heisman, right? Like everybody knows he won the Heisman. Like
He won the Heisman.
they can vacate our wins, but at the end of the day, we'll still see Daryl Jackson out there sacking the passer or whatever. That's just, and they did it with with NIL. They did it with this name, image, likeness thing. They pretty much said, "Look, it's time. You can't. You're not going to tell us what to do." And the NCAA, you know, like you said, they're down to basically only a disciplinary crew. So
Yeah,
Title IX,
at a
that whole
time when the
thing,
sport at a time when the sport needs leadership and it needs to be organized and structured for the good of the game, and there's no one to do that. And again, if you go back to the origin of the NCAA, that's what they were supposed to do. That was the role that they were supposed to play, but they haven't done that. They just play the role of disciplining everyone.
that's kind of one of the things that I'm hoping will come about with these super conferences. If you end up with the top 50 teams all in these two different conferences, almost like an AFL or AFC, NFC situation in the NFL, I feel like with that consolidated power, those two commissioners will have enough power to, you know, maybe if only those top 50 teams could branch out to be a championship division or a somehow self-contained semi-professional league, however they would have to do it. I'm hoping maybe that could be it. You know, if you brought the powers from Pac-12, Big 12, ACC all and condensed them into the SEC and the Big 10, maybe they could finally do it. But we'll see, I guess.
Folks, we got a Miami show coming up here in less than 10 minutes over on the Miami channel, 7 o'clock Eastern time with Cam Underwood from State of the U. Check out George's work on Renegade Report. And we'll be back here next Wednesday at 6 Eastern, folks. So we appreciate you jumping on board. And again, follow us on the Miami live show here in just a few minutes. If you want to troll the Canes group there, go right ahead. We'll bring you on over, have fun, trash talk, do whatever you will. Right, George, appreciate you being here. And again, we want to remind everyone that George is going to be live here at the Voice of College Football after every Florida State football game for post-game. And we appreciate that, George.
Absolutely.
All right, sir.
We'll see y'all Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll make it on back here next
Friday,
Wednesday,
I think we've got the post-game show this Friday, actually. The post-game host show, that's going to be for this Friday night, correct?
Yeah, we're going to get post-game show hosts together. Yes, this Friday. Absolutely.
We'll see you guys
on the
Friday,
national channel. Absolutely.